Reactor online. Sensor online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Hello and welcome to today's Battletech review. Today we're going to be looking at the Lao Hu, which is a pretty decent little machine from the Capellan Confederation, and I don't say that lightly. I've been having all sorts of problems, especially with recent machines from Ceres and even from Ellispont, ranging from Shengli falling apart when they get here, and well, the whole Vindicator thing, and quite a few different things. But Shengli generally is a company that I can trust, at least far enough that I'd be able to buy a machine from them and know that I can actually use them. Surprisingly, the Lao Hu is, well, very modern from the time it came out. Nowadays, it's, well, a pretty bog standard machine, but when it first came out, it was rather revolutionary in a few different ways. It has a lot of positive points compared to some other machines, and well, it is a bit expensive, but you get what you pay for, which is actually something pretty good in the case of this particular monster. So let's get into it. To talk about the Lao Hu, well, you need to talk about the Thunder as well. We already did a video on this, well, rather massive beast there. And this was a machine that was introduced in 3055 as an heavy striker siege breaker for the CCAF. It would be something that would replace something like a Hunchback, I would say, even though it was not as reliable or as tough in a way as the Hunchback, because, well, it features an XL engine and a few other different things. The mech itself is quite successful in my opinion, and you're going to see, well, a number of them floating around. But there was call to replace it almost immediately after release, mainly from other Capellan manufacturers and, well, probably a bunch of Mandarins sitting in pretty little towers. Ceres Metal Industries basically had a stranglehold on all standard models for the Confederation, and there was a risk that it could choke out other manufacturers, so, well, the strategos at the Capellan Confederation decided that, well, maybe it was the time to spread the love around and get a few other companies to start making machines to bolster up their military and bolster up their economy. From this discussion on the Thunder, we will now move to the discussion on the Victoria Academy of Arms and Technology, which is the people that started working on the Lao Hu, well, fairly quickly. It's a rather fantastic school on Victoria, obviously, in the Capellan Confederation. Victoria turned into a place that the Fed Sons had for a little while here in the start of the 32nd century, but, I mean, it's mostly a Capellan planet. While it is mainly a military academy, it is better known for its fantastic technician and engineering courses rather than its military education. I mean, if you have a degree from the VAAT, you are generally going to be seen as one of the better technician or engineer, and if you're a military man, well, you're not going to be as famous as some of the other schools around the Capellan Confederation. They still have a pretty decent turnaround and rate there for their pilots. I mean, Mechwarriors coming out of VAT generally are better at the technician and engineering portion of things, meaning that they can help with their own mechs and they have a better understanding of how to fight machines that are a little bit over-engineered. So they're not bad people either. If I had to choose, well, again, I'd still go with the New Avalon Institute of Science instead of VAAT, mostly because they don't require you to swear oath of allegiance to the Chancellor, but I mean, it's still a fairly solid alma mater nonetheless. Shengli Arms on their side there was mainly a refit and repair yard at the start of the 3060s, but they had a lot of room to grow as a corporation. They were built out of an old Star League research and production facility on Victoria, and Shengli helped the Confederation keep their existing mechs running since around the 3030s, but they wanted to expand quite a bit there. I mean, using an old Star League research and production facility is something that I have a good knowledge of, and a lot of those locations were fairly well defended, pretty well set up, and you already had, well, a decent amount of production materials and mass production equipment inside of it once you understood how to make it work, which around the 3030s, well, you were getting some of the Elm's memory core details to let you understand, well, how to start building ferrofibrous again, double heat sinks again, and all those fancy little things. Shengli's first foray into the production of new battle mechs came with the Duangong, which was a derivative of the SLDF Sling, which sold decently well as a light mech. The Sling slash Duangong is a little bit of an odd light mech, but it works fairly well for what it's meant to do. Where things started going fairly well is when the people at Shengli and VAAT started working together. Well, kind of working together. You had a small-time manufacturer on a planet with brand new technical and an engineering academy on the same planet, and both of them were willing to work with each other in order to increase their revenue and also get some people well-trained and well-experienced on new equipment. Even before the first official class of the Victoria Academy got released into the wild, they had some of their engineers and some of their trainers around there that introduced the Yu Wong in 3060. This is one of those assault mechs that is actually quite good, but that people kind of sleep on because, well, it hasn't been in production for quite some time due to, jihad-related issues. Shengli really specialized quickly into I technology equipment, and they petitioned the central government to let them build a replacement for the still quite new Thunder, but using some of the newer technology and some of the newer equipment that they had available to them. Sun Tzu Liao and the various thinking heads at the top of the Confederation wanted to see what was going to happen, so they quickly approved the product just to see what Shengli and VAT could do. Shengli put a lot on the line to produce the new Lao Hu, the Tiger, using an assortment of new technology and advanced equipment to push it just over the line over its various competitor. With an extra 3 million price tag here, it needed to perform fairly well or it would not be accepted compared to the Thunder, which was in production and was, well, fairly simple in the long run. Shengli built quite a bit of stuff there really quickly once they were approved, and they got new models and new upgrades for the Lao Hu fairly quickly, but there were some doubt clouds in the horizon. The Jihad cost them the Yuwang production facility as the Olsen Ranger mercenaries betrayed them in support of the Jihadis, or maybe because they were actually pissed off that the Capellans were abusing them and trying to company market them. There's quite a few different things here that went on here with the Olsen's Rangers, and we'll probably never know the whole story. Later on, during the Republican era, the Victoria fell to the Federated Sons, and the CCAF wanted to destroy the factory to deny it to the Fed Sons. But the whole thing actually didn't fall apart, and it was rescued and sold to Capellan. Capellan basically had a deal with Shengli. Basically, we're going to hold your factories, we're going to basically get one of your license and use it to build our own stuff, but we won't damage or nuke your old thing, so if the planet goes back to Capellan control, well, you can take it back. There were a few other things underground that were underneath the whole thing. I don't have the full contract, but it was basically a handshake deal between Capellan and Shengli. By the time the Fed Sun had left Victoria, the factories were restored, and Shengli took back control and started producing new machines again. The original Lao Hu LHU-2B came out in 3062, and it invests a whole lot of money in weight-saving technology, but it still remains surprisingly reliable for a mech in its category. Its top speed matches the Thunder, but more importantly, it actually matches the Timber Wolf, and it uses that fairly large 375XL engine to get a top speed of 86 kilometers per hour, which is, well, good for a big heavy mech. The body is made of endo steel to save on some more weight, and the whole assembly is protected by 13.5 tons of standard plates, which is quite reasonable once again on a 75-ton mech. The 10 built-in double heatsinks are usually enough to keep you cool based on the weapons that you have on the standard configuration. Outside of this, well, the fanciest piece of hardware on the Lao Hu at release at least was the Shengli LB-20X autocannon that was mounted in the arm with the ammo feed going into the right torso. This is a weapon that is shared with the Yuo Wang, the bigger brother mech that they were building as well. And it was, quite revolutionary at the time because people, were building LB-10X, the Midron Excel, for quite some time. But the other X version autocannons, they were more of a clan thing at the point. You had 3 tons of reloads as well to let you fire slugs and cluster rounds fairly efficiently, but of course you don't get the super fancy autocannon rounds, but the increase in range and the increase in other things, well, make it still a little bit better. Supporting this is a Martel ER Large Laser, which is, well, another very good weapon. And you also have a 15 rack of LRM fed by 2 tons of reload, allowing you to engage threats at longer range while closing in the gap and shooting that LB-20X once you get in. I think it's a better setup than on the Thunder, which is more meant to be really a battering ram. This is something that can be used in a variety of situations and is fast enough to bring all of those weapons to their effective range to be able to deal the damage it needs to deal. The LHU-3B came out the following year and is a bit of an odd duck in my opinion because it doesn't appear to have been built for the CCAF forces at the time. There is a decent number of C3 machines now available to our friends in the Capellan Confederation, but back in those days, C3 equipment was mainly focused in the Federated Sun and the Draconis Combine, who are still using it in fairly large number. So the 3B main piece of equipment is that C3 command computer on its shoulder, which, well, mixes it with a tag, which is a little bit more useful because everybody's got Aero 4s, and Aero 4s require a tag to be fairly efficient. Your main weapon is replaced with a copy of a Midron XL LB-10X, giving you a little bit more range at a little bit less weight, while the shoulder now mounts a 10 rack of LRMs with Artemis 4 guidance to make it a little bit more efficient. Even though it was never really meant for export, you will see a surprising number of those in service of the first 2 groups we've just talked about here, the Fed Sons and the Draconis Combine. The Combine having a deal with the Capellan Confederation at least means that they were friendly enough with it, while the Fed Sons, well, they probably stole them, or they were sold as they were falling off the back of a dropship. I am not 100% sure. More modern units sometimes use it as their command unit for the C3 Lances that the CCAF now has a few of. In 3064, a new variant was also introduced, which was the LHU-3C, which was more meant as a support unit compared to the original siege breaker of the Thunder. The main weapon is now a Gauss rifle, a copy of the Grizzard 210 from Aulus that is generally used on their Huron Warrior, with 2 tons of reload, allowing you to stay in the fight, well, just as long as that LB-20X with 3 tons of reload. It's a very decent sniper from there, since it's combined with that ER Large Laser on the other arm, so you're able to stay at a range and take things out fairly well. The fancy thing, though, on this one is the LRM racks being split into 3 5 racks of LRM. That might sound a little bit weird. I mean, you may be like, well, why are you doing that? But it's really to have an effective use of specialty ammo, which were now quite prevalent, as you have 3 tons of reloads for that weapon as well. You can easily carry just mine rounds, you can carry semi-guided, you can carry smokes, all sorts of fancy things. And with 3 separate launchers, you can start shooting at 3 separate targets, meaning that you can lay down a quick minefield fairly quickly here with your LHU-3C. At the outbreak of the Jihad in 3069, Shengli introduced the LHU-3L that was a little bit more versatile as a damage dealer, using an advanced targeting computer to improve, well, the direct fire weapons that you add on there. Your main gun is arguably your right arm mounted rotary AC-5, which is fed by 3 tons of reload, allowing it to stay in the fight, well, long enough if you put the rotation speed around 5. If you go at full speed, well, you are going to deplete your rounds fairly quickly. On the opposite arm, you have a brand new plasma rifle with a single ton of reload, which is not as much as I would want on a mech like this, but, you know, it's what you have there. Finally, you've got that 10 rack of Artemis 4 guided LRMs there with a single ton of reload, meaning that things are going to be a little tight for everything. I'm not sure here if the targeting computer is worth having so little ammo for all of your weapons or not having another backup equipment. So do what you can with what you have. It's not my favorite Lao Hu. The final standard production Lao Hu came out in the tail end of the Jihad with the LHU-4E, and it's once again packed with all sorts of advanced goodies that were now available to the Capellan Confederation. Your armor is replaced with stealth armor with the necessary Guardian ECM mounted in the head, since you now have a small cockpit. Small cockpits are, well, okay. The pilot is not usually liking sitting in them, but it does allow for a little bit more room in that head to stick in some electronics. Another big change is the addition of an XL gyro to the 375 XL engine, allowing you to save another extra 2 tons. All of that together allows you to mount a heavy PPC on one side and a Gauss rifle on the other, making this a very decent sniper, at least in the mid-range category, which is popular with inner sphere machines. At point-blank defense, you've got a trio of rocket launcher 10s mounted where the LRM would normally sit, and you need 14 heat sinks there to keep you cool because, well, a heavy PPC is quite demanding. You will see a variety of little upgrade kits for the Lao Hu floating around, the main one being for any of the Lao Hu without stealth armor, you just add light ferrofibrous to them. Light ferrofibrous is generally pretty lame. It's a 6% increase in protection for a trade-off of a little bit of internal room, which is generally not that good. The thing is, on the Lao Hu, you've got that particular amount of room, and you've got no weight to spend on anything else. So if you add light ferrofibrous to it, you basically have the same kind of protection you would have on a Timberwolf on your Lao Hu. And replacing the plating with light ferrofibrous is, well, not very difficult, and some technicians are actually going to love it because it's much easier to print light ferrofibrous than to cast regular plates. So all in all, I think it's a very potent little upgrade. Another common replacement here is to replace the 15 rack of LRMs with a 20 rack of MRMs, giving you a little bit more close-range punch. This is extremely easy to do because, well, you can pop it out and pop it in, and it'll just fit right in. So that generally works fairly well. Neither of those things is very hard to do or very expensive, and you can even do it on the field when required if you've got, well, at least the necessary casting parts. Another particular Lao Hu I want to talk about is the White Tiger Lao Hu Baoyu, which is a thing of beauty and murderous intent, piloted by the commander of the White Tiger Society, which is a little organization that has been fighting the Capellan Crown for, well, a little bit of time now. They usually served under Free Capella for quite some time, a terrorist organization fighting the Capellan Crown, but since Free Capella collapsed on itself, they are still floating around space, and we might be providing them with equipment as a mercenary unit, because, well, that's pretty much what they are. The White Tiger is a, combined equipment here, using some advanced weapons that they bought, probably not from us, with a Clan LB-20X in the arm and a Clan ER-PPC in the other, replacing your regular LB-20X and the ER large laser, while you have a shoulder-mounted 9-tube rack of MML to give you some flexibility. It has 12 double heat sinks, keeping it cool enough, and it has that light ferrofibrous skin we were talking about earlier because, well, originally it was one of those basic Lao Hu where they stuck light ferrofibrous on to make it a little bit more durable. It is quite a good machine. Of course, using clan technology makes it better on average, but it is still quite capable. D-Thunder is a couple of million C-bills cheaper on the market, or whatever reserve currency you are currently using, but the Lao Hu really beats it in terms of sheer efficiency of the design, especially with just some minor tweaks to it. Is it that much of a better mech? Well, it is kind of hard to say because both have both their ups and downs. The Thunder is better when you get at really brawling range here, but the Lao Hu really feels like it's far more flexible. Both of them, though, suffer from the same kind of problem. The hunchback still exists, and it really fills out the role of a big chunk of iron carrying a 20-class gun on its shoulder. It's not a bad mech, to be quite honest, and the hunchback, well, is slower than both of those machines, but it is also a whole lot cheaper. So you do the math, you decide what you want to buy and what you want to use, and I will see you guys later. I thank you very much for watching and listening, and bye-bye.